We'll go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us for what promises to be a lively discussion on how Kentucky tourism and travel has been impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic and how the industry looks to rebound moving forward. I'm John Cox from the Kentucky Chamber of Commerce, here to introduce our panel for this edition of the Restart Kentucky webinar series presented by the Kentucky Chamber and the Kentucky Community and Technical College System. Joining us today, we have David Greene, the General Manager of the Louisville Downtown Marriott, Eric Gregory, President of the Kentucky Distillers Association, Candace McGraw from the Cincinnati Northern Kentucky or CVG Airport CEO, and Mary Quinn Raymer, President of Visit Lex, the Lexington CVB. And moderating today's discussion is my good friend Hank Phillips, who is the President of and CEO of the Kentucky Travel Industry Association. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Hank. Thank you.
All right, thank you, John. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the webinar, and I want to certainly thank the Chamber for hosting this and also for their partnership throughout the crisis and prior to it as well. They've consistently recognized the importance of the travel and tourism industry to the overall economy of Kentucky, and we appreciate that so much. To get started, this is going to be mainly a series of questions for you to hear from these experts, that the panelists. I'm going to start us with just a quick set of thoughts, and these are points that have kind of driven our work as the Travel Industry Association, our advocacy, our messaging, and they may provide a little bit of context for the rest of the conversation. The very first thought is this: that this industry is devastated, but it's not defeated. And we are making that point loudly and clearly to policymakers, media, and anyone who will listen. The other one, second one is that we want to get back to work, not one day later than we can as an industry, but not one day sooner than we should. And we try to balance out being assertive about opening back up, healthy at work, but also recognizing that there are risks, and we certainly don't want to be triggering a spike or a resurgence. And the third one is that as important as tourism is to the economy of Kentucky and to the nation's economy, we make clear to everyone that if we want a full recovery of the economy, that's not going to happen unless there's a full recovery of the tourism industry. And like I say, those have been driving our work. And to now go into some detail about different segments of our industry, John's already introduced our panel, and I want to start with kind of an overall question for all four of them to answer. And that basically is, tell us about your role within your organization and how both your role and your company or organization has changed. And Eric, you drew the post position, so on this round, you go first.
Well, thanks, Hank. Thanks to you for all your great work. And let me echo what you said about the Chamber. We could not have gotten through at least to where we are today without the Chamber's support and help. So thank you to John and Ashley and their great team over there. We're proud parts of the tourism industry. Obviously, our central core business is producing the world's best whiskey, and that has been allowed to remain open. But our distillers very quickly shut down their tourism centers when all this started. And not only was that a big loss for the distillers, but more importantly, a big loss for our community partners, because they count on a lot of that tourism and our partners like tour companies and things like that. So really what we've been trying to focus on, mostly the transition for us was, and we're an industry that's very collaborative anyway, starting to try to figure out what's the best way we can help now. And that's with the production of hand sanitizer. And that's where most of our distilleries shifted to making hand sanitizer and donating that to first responders and emergency personnel in hospitals. and some of our smaller distilleries that are really being impacted by this because tourism is their number one distribution point and a great source of revenue for them. They've been able to sell some that has really kept them open. We've been really afraid that we'd lose a great many of our smaller craft distilleries because they do count on the tourism industry so much for their revenue and for getting their products and names out. And in the past few weeks, I guess our role has changed here at the association, mainly towards looking like the rest of us at how we reopen and how we reopen responsibly. Because just as you said, Hank, you're right. We've got to get tourism back open for the economy and for our businesses to be able to, see on the other side of this. But we want to do so in a way that's safe and is welcoming and makes our customers and everybody feel safe. So we've had a strategy task force working for the past several weeks. We were very fortunate to have a consultant, an infectious disease consultant from the University of Kentucky, help us put together that plan and submit that to the governor. And we're very much looking forward next week to reopening our gift shops with retail and potentially our restaurants and some tasting rooms as well. So again, we've kind of been the air traffic controllers during all this and getting information out to our members and trying to help assist them in answering questions any way we possibly can.
Great, thank you. Thank you. Mary Quinn?
Thanks, Hank, and thank you, John. And I certainly reiterate Eric's remarks about how helpful both the Kentucky Travel Industry Association has been, as well as the state chamber. You've just been a wealth of resources and information, and that's not only been helpful to me and my colleagues at Visit Lex, but also to so many throughout the tourism industry. So a really sincere, heartfelt thanks to you all. I think Eric said it perfectly for me as well when he said we're serving as an air traffic controller, and so much about what Visit Lex has done for the hospitality in Lexington and the surrounding counties has been that as well, a similar role, trying to provide resources and connect people with folks that can give them clarification and additional information, trying to help them really think through what their recovery and reopening strategies look like. I think this is an industry that has always taken guest safety and wellness very seriously. And I think that you will continue to see a really strong commitment from that coming on the other side of this pandemic. I just think this time it's going to be a little bit more visible. If I think about hotels, it was one of those things where you didn't necessarily want to see the housekeeping carts coming through the lobby, and that all might change post-pandemic. We may get really comfortable with seeing, a lot of sanitation. So we've been working with our industry partners, and here in Lexington, been very fortunate to be under the leadership of Mayor Gorton, working with the city as we collectively look to reopen. And I certainly echo the sentiments as well. We're really eager to do so, but we want to do that in a responsible way, and we want to ensure that we're keeping everybody's wellness at the forefront of what we do. I can just say, by virtue of being in touch with so many different aspects within the hospitality tourism sector, that this is an industry that has been truly devastated by this pandemic. I think it's fair to say that 75% of our workforce has either been furloughed or laid off. And so the heartache is real. And so I know that we will come through on the other side. We're certainly resilient, but it is, I think it's going to be a long journey for our industry, especially to get back to a pre-pandemic state. So we're eager to get started, but we're mentally preparing ourselves for a long journey.
Thank you. Dave, pick up where she just left off, please.
All right, very good. I will. Thanks for having me today. I really appreciate it. And as the general manager of the Louisville Marriott downtown, I'm also here as the president of the Louisville Hotel Association and commissioner on the board for Louisville Tourism. So, a couple of people have mentioned the word start. We look forward to having travel back where it was, but we started a long time ago, really. And it's really just about switching gears and going down a different path right now. And it's really about networking working with the people in the association, our hotel members, the city of Louisville, the state of Kentucky, staying in touch with our customers, and really taking what we thought we knew and realizing we don't know what we don't know. So it's a time of learning for us, and getting rid of any, ego or tenure that was there, and realize we are all amateurs at this, and we need to be, we really need to expose ourselves and listen to the experts, the subject matter experts, engage them in ways that we haven't before, to learn from them and bring them in as partners, so that we can continue to invite our guests in to meet, our guests in to sleep, and our associates in to work and to provide for their families on what they're working for to be successful in life, in a place that is safe and secure, and a place that they can be proud to be in. So it, for me and for many of us, it's really been a humbling time. But with that humility, hopefully comes a sense of purpose and drive to learn these things, be exposed to things we didn't know before, and implement them with real enthusiasm and confidence for our constituents, our members, and then those people that drive. If we take care of our associates, they're going to take care of the guests, and the guest will take care of the business. We just have to give them the confidence that that's what we're here to do.
Thank you. Candace, land the plane for us.
Thanks, Hank. First, let me thank John and Ashley and the team at the Chamber. As everyone has said, they've been really integral in keeping us all connected, right? So we can have great discussions like this. It's interesting when David talked about we're all amateurs at this. In the airport industry, we do all sorts of disaster drills, and all sorts of scenarios. And none of us could have ever planned for this scenario, right, out of our wildest dreams. So, the role of the airport, particularly during times of crisis, is never clear in terms of making sure we can move people and goods, those essential services. So we've remained open during the pandemic, and are, thankfully, those folks who have the need to travel have continued to be able to do so in a safe way. And we can talk a little later about a Fly Healthy campaign that we're doing. And then, particularly at CVG, we have 2 large cargo hubs here, as they do in Louisville. And those cargo hubs are booming to make sure that, folks can get the supplies and critical equipment that they need and the consumer goods out there. So we're about making sure we can keep the national economy going, making sure we can keep frontline workers being able to travel between states. And then, of course, focusing now on how we can reopen and make sure folks feel comfortable flying into Kentucky, right, to visit all of the great destinations that we have, and making sure we can stay connected globally. I talk frequently with our colleagues in Louisville and Lexington, and I know they're focused on the same. And at least in the aviation industry, I'm privileged to serve on our world board. And so we've had the knowledge, be able to gain the understanding of our colleagues from Asia that have already worked through this, and bring some of those best practices to light here, and particularly in Kentucky. So we can talk about that a little later as well. So we're really dealing with the air traffic controllers, literal air traffic controllers, to keep things moving for all of you.
Right. Okay, great. Thank you. And Candace, we're going to stay with you as we start drilling down now into some of the sectors that each of you represent. We'll make another round of questions a little more specific to each panelist. And Candace, let's stick with you. And you kind of alluded to talking in a little more detail, so let's do that. Share with us, and I think you mentioned a program that you all are working with. Talk a little bit about some of the more specific things that you're working on to provide that confidence to travelers, and you can add into that how long you think it's going to take that confidence to build.
Sure. Thanks, Hank. I don't know about your particular facets of the travel industry. Our industry guidance is it may take 18 to 24 months to come back to pre-pandemic levels. I'm starting to read some more information that may even be a little longer. But in order to build confidence so people will feel comfortable traveling again, you'll see at all airports across the country, folks have installed plexiglass at your ticket counters, gate areas, concession areas. You'll see all of the concession areas much more wide open. You know, tables have been removed to make sure folks can have the necessary social distancing. Going through the security checkpoint, you'll be spaced out more. I know there's discussion now about national level, do you require some sort of temperature check? And there's some conversation ongoing about whether the TSA will mandate temperature checks for all passengers, and they would conduct them, still to be determined. All the major airlines that would fly in and out of our region, those passengers will be required to wear a face mask as they board the aircraft. The flight crews will ask them to keep that mask on during the trip. All of the airline employees will be wearing masks, and TSA as well. And TSA, I think, is also requiring their employees to wear eye cover as well. So all of those things, you know, each of the airports, inclusive of mine, is really stepped up the cleaning regimen, even to the point of, you know, having attendants in restrooms, et cetera, trying to make sure that we're as mindful of the cleanliness issues as possible. And of course, signage everywhere about the right social distancing. You know, the
Candace,
right now kind of nation. Yeah.
Okay, just
Sorry,
real fast,
go
and it may be, that's okay, I'm my bad. It may be too early to ask this, but are there any of those changes at airports that you're already implementing and about to implement that you consider to be permanent, that you think will be the and I know we all cringe at this term, but the new normal that will be permanent?
I don't know. Maybe it's too early to tell. You know, all of this is evolving. I would think if there's a vaccine developed or some other protocol, maybe you'll see a relaxation. But I think all of us, every industry seems to be also trying to develop things that that can make sure there's a contactless way of transacting business. So I know there's a whole slew of industries looking at how to make your travel through the checkpoint so there's no physical contact if need be, et cetera. So I think more to come on what may be permanent and also what will continue to evolve into the future.
Okay, all right, thank you. Let's shift over to hotels. Dave, kind of go in the same direction. Drill down a little bit into what the impact has been, how long you think it's going to take to begin to return to some level comparable to pre-crisis levels, and what you're doing within the hotel and what other hotels are doing to provide confidence to folks.
Perfect, thank you. And you know, while I said we're amateurs at this, you know, this is a new world for us, but what we're not amateurs at is problem solving. And I think that's what you're hearing the panelists talk about here today is, you know, what are the factors in front of us and how do we problem solve it? It's something we do on a regular basis with traveling guests or meetings or associates, and now we're applying it in really just a new realm. But in hotels, you know, the hotel industry, much like the airline industry, has been impacted upwards of 90% reduction in business. Many hotels, over 1,000 Marriott branded hotels have temporarily suspended operations. It's just not feasible to keep them open, and really the cash bleed that happens with the low levels of travel that's currently taking place. So those hotels are you know, still have people in and learning, and then we're learning from hotels that have stayed open. You know, here in Louisville, I've talked to Patrick Gregory at the Galt House, who is still open, Brad Walker at the Brown, and what are they experiencing from guest travel and what are they learning on the fly. It's valuable information. But the things that are happening within the hotel industry, you know, issues like this typically push trends quick. So at Marriott, you know, we started, you know, a couple of years ago where you can check into your room while on the aircraft or while in your car and bypass a front desk and go right to your room and be able to unlock your room with your mobile device. I expect to see that compounded in other brands and across the industry very quickly now. But at a micro level, we're looking at, guest rooms, very high contact areas, and how are we super cleaning those so that our guests can stay confident. Hospital grade disinfectant in the rooms with electromagnetic vaporizers and the like. Removal of any non-essential paper goods that the guests can be assured they weren't there and touched and unable to be sanitized from previous guests. Laundry protocol driven by the CDC with high temperatures, hospital grade product that can ensure sanitation of product, and then even packaging those products before they go to a room so there's no chance of cross-contamination in transit. And then limited housekeeping entry. It's always great in a hotel when you come back from a day of meetings that your room is refreshed and cleaned and feels good. Well, that's probably something that's going to change in the future, where people don't want their housekeeper in their room while they're gone at any time. So that will be done on a request and really set up by appointment if somebody wants that. Otherwise, rooms are probably only going to be entered and cleaned upon checkouts. So those are 5 really game-changing situations within hotels that are being implemented very, very quickly.
But and add to that, if you would, quickly, anything else that, as it may relate to events held within the hotel, the meetings, conferences, and the like.
Yeah, it's a large part of our business, especially in convention hotels or in centers like Kentucky National Convention Center. What does social distancing look like? It used to be 3 people per 6 foot on a schoolroom setting. To be comfortable and spacious, it might be 2. Well, now that's going to be 1. So a 20,000 square foot ballroom or a 2,000 square foot breakout room, the capacities are going to change significantly. So how does that room set? How do we build confidence with that contact or those meeting planners that the social distancing is there? How do we provide food service? The day of communal buffets, communal coffee breaks are probably gone until we get some sort of therapeutic or vaccine to help us along with this. So the eating styles within meetings are going to change, and how we provide that, service that, and provide our guests with a real sense of calm and confidence around it is paramount to our success. And we're working on it every day, taking photographs, sending information, communicating with our guests that are on the books, our conventions that are on the books, our future meeting planners. So.
Okay. And I got to ask really fast, talk Derby to us. How you went through the transition from the postponement and how things are looking from a hotel perspective for September.
Absolutely. Derby is a wonderful, wonderful event, not just for obviously us here in Louisville, but Kentucky and the country, right? It's an international showcase for us. So, we're essentially sold out on Derby every year with a lot of repeat groups and customers. And those folks that were on the book, we work very closely with them to make sure if they wanted to move their dates to the first Saturday in September, we work very hard with them to find the opportunity to do that. Some people just weren't able to do that, and we work with them for solutions as well. But we're confident that the first Saturday in September is going to be just as wonderful, although different than the first Saturday in May.
All right, Mary Quinn, we'll stick with the horse theme. Talk to us about Breeders' Cup and where that stands, and what you're hearing and seeing with respect to that.
So I know that Keeneland is very eager to get back to racing business as well. As you know, we had to cancel our April meet, and of course, Keeneland is the great lead into the Kentucky Derby and 1st of May. So I think all of us missed that race meet very much. I do know Keeneland and Breeders' Cup both are working very diligently on their plans, and doing everything they can in terms of coordinating with health officials and government officials about what the race meet looks like this fall, as well as the Keeneland sales in September, and also mapping out what Breeders' Cup looks like. But in terms of specifics on the format, and particularly the spectator aspect of that, I think it is simply too early to tell. And so we're all eager and we are all hopeful, but at this point, I don't think there's anything definitive that can be shared with respect to the exact format of Breeders' Cup in November.
Okay, all right. Let's talk a little bit, Mary Quinn, about the C in CVB and the conventions and conference market. What you're seeing, what your, if your crystal ball has any clarity to it, what you're thinking about that whole market going forward.
So my crystal ball turns out to be very murky these days. I have not quit looking. It's been interesting, and David, I'm sure, can speak to this as well. It's kind of been in phases. And so the first wave, excuse me, the first wave of the pandemic was really just dealing with cancellations and trying to do everything we could to honor the relationships that we have with meeting planners, because they're so important to us and to our destinations. And we had a lot of people that had to really pivot on a very short notice. Hank, as you know, being a state association, these meetings are very lucrative to these associations and their bottom lines. And so we were trying to do everything we could to accommodate their need to either cancel or, in what we prefer is obviously a postponement. So that took us through the first few weeks of the pandemic. I think now we are definitely looking more future forward and trying to get meetings back on the books. However, I will say to you, there's still quite a bit of trepidation as it relates to the latter part of this calendar year and into the first and second quarters of 2021. I have no doubt in my mind that the convention business will rebound and that we will still have a need to get together and host meetings and conventions. But I think, as David was mentioning, until we have therapeutics and or vaccine, I just think the format of that is going to look very different than what we had grown accustomed to. And so we are fortunate that the travel industry is filled with innovators and problem solvers, and we are up for the task. So I can assure you that one thing will not change in all of that, and that is the Kentucky hospitality that people have grown accustomed to and that we are famous for. And even if we're doing it with face masks on, we'll still do it as genuinely as ever.
Amen and amen. Eric, first, thank you for sanitizing the Commonwealth.
Don't drink the hand sanitizer. Do not drink the hand sanitizer, please.
A while back, we would have said you're kind of in two businesses, distilling and tourism, and now three. But back to the original businesses of the business of distilling. Certainly, tourism has helped with the boom, the boost in bourbon. So as that piece has gone away, what has that tourism absence, what impact has that had on the bottom line business of distilling and distilleries?
Well, right now, actually, distilling or bourbon sales are up. As all alcohol is up. Again, we hope everybody is being responsible as you're staying healthy at home. So there's one side of it, but at the same time, those are on-premise sales, off-premise sales package stores and things that have been allowed to remain open. We're extremely concerned about when the numbers start coming in and what the future holds because of the closures of the bars and restaurants. The longer that continues, that's going to continue just like it's decimated the tourism industry. That will harm the beverage alcohol industry, which is already, taking a hit from the closures we've seen already. So we're very eager, again, for restaurants to reopen. I think they're eligible next week on the 22nd, and then bars to reopen as soon as the governor can safely announce that. I think he said, and sometime in July. But the shutdown of the tourism centers has really been disappointing, mainly because it's our opportunity to continue to build brand ambassadors and brand loyalists who come to Kentucky, and as Mary Quinn said, get a taste of that genteel Southern hospitality. We like to say that every sip of bourbon is a sip of Kentucky. It's rolling green fields and white fences and horses and all the things that makes the Commonwealth so special. So, without having 70% of our visitors coming from out of state, we've lost that opportunity for them to go back and pollinate, if you will, their friends and neighbors and tell them about what a great time they had visiting one of our Kentucky Bourbon Trail distilleries and come back. So we've never had a year, and this is the 21st birthday next week of the Kentucky Bourbon Trail. We've never had a year where we've actually lost attendance. This will be the first, but we've been fortunate that attendance continues to go up because people do come and have a great time at the distilleries, and are able to go back and tell their friends and family and neighbors and get them to visit Kentucky. So I really share a lot of people's concerns about our smaller craft distilleries. Their main source of revenue has been brand building by opening their centers up for tourism and very intimate experiences, very hands-on, and that's all going to change now. But they have been able to stay open with hand sanitizer, and I know they're all eager and anxious to get back open, and like we all are, and welcome people back to their facilities.
Let's just take it one little step further, one slice of the visitor experience associated with bourbon, and that's been the proliferation of bourbon events. Fill us in a little bit, bring us up to speed on postponements and cancellations, and more to the point, what implications that has. Is it going to create a kind of a gap in the consumer awareness and affinity for bourbon if some of these events have been delayed or have to wait till next year?
Well, we've certainly had to make some tough decisions. Our board decided a couple of weeks ago to cancel our annual Kentucky Bourbon Affair Fantasy Camp, which we were moving to September this year in conjunction with the Trifesta in Louisville with Danny Wimber Presents. And we were going to be the lead-in for Bourbon and Beyond. And when they made the decision, which I still think is the right decision, and our board obviously made the right decision to cancel that had repercussions for bringing in thousands of people, and for DWP, tens of thousands of people to the Louisville and surrounding communities to spend a week immersing themselves in our bourbon culture. A lot of our distilleries have canceled events and may not participate in events for the rest of the year, as Mary Quinn says, just because of the unknowns that are out there, especially looking into the fall, and with the medical professionals and cautioning that this might get worse in conjunction with flu season. There's so many unknowns. It's hard to sign contracts and book venues and things when you really aren't sure if people are going to come or if things are going to be open for that. So our distilleries brand teams are very good at their jobs. And again, this is an industry that survived Prohibition. So they're pivoting now to doing a lot of online things and virtual activities. Our Kentucky Bourbon Trail director, Adam Johnson, and his fiance, Mandy Ryan, every day at 4:30 have been doing a fantastic job teaching people how to make cocktails with different brand ambassadors and bourbon barons and master distillers. And now you're seeing the brands really doing a lot more of that. So I think you're going to see a lot of that here in the next few months as we continue to figure out different ways to market to people without having to actually go and present to them and physically pour them drinks and things like that. You'll see a lot more online activities.
Okay, great. Thank you. We'll start our, well, Eric, I'm gonna stick with you. We're kind of rounding the turn and heading for home a little bit. So we'll start kind of with the second round of questions. And you've already kind of spoken to this, but I guess as an association guy like you, I have a particular interest in it. It's relevant to about anyone in the industry. And that is, talk a little bit about how you've brought your members together, large and small together. And I know you've engaged in a really extensive planning process. as far as how to open, when to open, all the recommendations I think you referred to that have gone to the governor's office. Talk about that process and any highlights of it that we can all learn from of that sort of collaborative planning toward reopening.
Well, we're very fortunate that we have an industry that's built on 200 years of friendship and camaraderie. I mean, you know, Bill Samuel's godfather was Colonel Beam. How cool can that be, right? So that makes our job a lot easier here at the association. We represent 40 member distilleries, and they're used to working together anyway. And our motto has always been, we're stronger by working together than standing apart. And that certainly helped on everything from tourism and business to government affairs and et cetera. So really, it was almost, again, second nature to the distilleries to immediately get on the phone with each other and talk about, okay, what are we going to do? How are we going to get through this? And how we're going to get through this together, as the governor says. So our board started holding weekly board meetings to talk about every kind of issues that we were all facing, and any thing we were hearing from the governor's office about requirements and advice and counsel coming from them. We immediately started having our visitor center managers, come together and talk about planning and what the other side looks like as well. And I think one of the things that you'll see from the distilling industry, at least through the Kentucky Bourbon Trail coming on the other side of this, is there is a great interest in being consistent in the reopenings. So there are a lot of things like everybody's talked about. You'll see plexiglass barriers and people in masks and gloves and things, but we're really looking at consistent signage among the distilleries, a lot of, consistent decals, consistency and formats in the way that once we're allowed to do tastings, so you don't go to a distillery and see something completely different, that there's safety and consistency all throughout the Kentucky Bourbon Trail Tour, going all the way down to our craft experiences. And our craft gang has been tremendous. We've also been engaging with them in phone calls, really asking them what we can do for them. And our bigger distilleries have been fantastic mentors over the years to the smaller distilleries. And so they've looked to them for guidance as well. So it's really been communication. It's been a key for us in making sure that everybody gets on the phone. And then like you, Hank, I know we're sending out a ton of emails to our members early in the morning, late at night, just trying to keep them up to with the latest information and the changing guidelines and things, because communication right now is the most valuable commodity to us. And that's something that I think everybody appreciates.
Yeah. Okay, good. And Mary Quinn, let's stay somewhat on that same theme as Lexington's destination organization, not just destination marketing organization. Talk about the different segments of the industry from your perspective and what you've seen in the way of collaboration and how things may have, if they have changed in that regard, the communication, coordination, collaboration, all those great C words, what you're seeing amongst the different segments of the industry.
So I think that, much like Eric mentioned, collaboration has really been, stellar these last 8 weeks. I feel like the hospitality community in Lexington has always been very gregarious with one another and always had a passion for taking care of not only the guests, but colleagues. And I just feel like that's been supersized over these last 2 months. It has certainly been in the wave of sort of blow after blow of bad news and loss. That has been probably the most heartwarming aspect of all this for me personally, is just to hear these stories of partnership and collaboration and compassion. And there are 2 things in Lexington that immediately stepped into action in terms of just providing meals. So obviously the Lee Initiative, which is not just unique to Lexington, but throughout several cities, really directed primarily at food service workers. And then also Nourish Lexington, which Visit Lex has been really involved in. And the idea was pretty simple. We had these kitchens and facilities that weren't being used for their intended purposes. And so we could convert those kitchens into kitchens preparing food for those who needed it. And so we've been able to offer a small payment to folks who are working in those kitchens, utilizing their skills and their food food service license, and we've been able to serve tens of thousands of meals over the last 2 weeks. I've lost count exactly where we are, but I know we were north of 20,000. So it's been remarkable what we've been able to get out. And I just think that shows, it's a great testament to the collaboration and the care that exists in this industry. I also think we've seen some great innovation. So prior to all this happening, many of our small locally owned restaurants did not have sophisticated online ordering or delivery or takeout, and all of them really have pivoted for the most part to get those systems in place. And I think that's going to be a real positive legacy from all this, is that they'll continue doing online ordering and delivery and takeout. And so that's a win. That's a blessing in the midst of all this. So we've seen some very good innovation. And the last thing that I'll just make note of is I personally have been working alongside Mayor Gordon with a reopening committee, and we have been talking with 8 different subsections of the hospitality industry over the last few weeks, working specifically on those plans and the details of those plans. And I can just say that with each subsection, we've had very good conversation. I think, as Eric mentioned, there's a real desire to be unanimous in the messaging that we put forth. I think we want to be clear as an industry that your safety and your wellness is a top priority for us. And I think people are really eager to make sure that throughout the travel continuum, you're getting a singular message.
Okay, excellent. Dave, I was going to ask you about more precise tactics and strategies you guys are taking in terms of health and safety, but you've already done a good job on that. So I'm going to throw you a little bit of a curveball. Let's talk about something different. Let's talk about workforce, because I know pre-crisis for hotels, having the quantity and quality of workforce necessary has been a challenge. As we work our way through the crisis and beyond, talk about the implications on workforce and any sort of issues that you see hotels and your property in particular dealing with.
Well, the challenges first and foremost are making sure that, the folks that are furloughed or the folks that are laid off, that we still have relationships with, have the information and can navigate the maze to get assistance, whether it's paying for insurance, getting their unemployment benefits, and doing everything we can to help them in current state. And while we don't have a crystal ball, we kind of look through bottles of amber, and amber being the color of the sun that we're all drawn to, it gives us light at the end of the tunnel, that we're going to come out of this. And when we do, staying in touch with our workforce now, taking care of them now, where we've had drive-through hot shops. That's where Marriott got their start, was through pouring cold root beer in Washington, D.C. And when winters got cold, they thought, well, our revenue stream's going to go away. So they started making chili. So we did a chili drive for our associates, but staying engaged with them, making them comfortable and confident that they're going to come back to a safe place to be able to continue to learn and to grow, that there is a place for them post-pandemic as we start taking care of guests again and guests start traveling. Because, listen, they will come back. People live in these screens and they're starved for experiences, and we provide venues for experiences, and destinations like we're fortunate to be in provide wonderful experiences. So right now, it really is about nurturing the relationship with our associates, knowing that they are going to want to come back, and providing a place where they can come back safe and confident to achieve the things they're trying to achieve in life. And whether it's raising their kids or their grandkids, or going to school, or getting a house, or upgrading apartments, that's what we're working toward. Because without our associate base, nothing else is achievable.
All right, thank you. Candace, Dave just used the term safe and confident. Talk to us about apart from the specifics you've talked about that are happening within airports, give us your pitch, if you will, on for this whole industry to be able to go out and say, air travel, is safe and be confident.
Yeah, thanks, Hank. You know, one of the things we've learned from our colleagues in Asia, which I think will be a welcome news to everybody on the panel and certainly folks listening in today, is that leisure travel was the first to reopen and people were anxious to get out, travel again, partake in great experiences. And so it's incumbent upon all of us to make sure those folks feel safe traveling. You know, all those specifics I mentioned, I think are being enacted across the country. Eric talked about the need for uniformity amongst certain industries, and the aviation industry is no different. I know the airlines, while they're fierce competitors amongst one another, have banded together to implement certain streamlined procedures, airports in similar ways. You know, we have calls multiple times a week with my colleagues across the country talking about what are those things that are going to evoke passenger confidence. I know myself, I would have no hesitation traveling right now. I think folks are so cognizant of the safety factors and have mitigated as much risk as they possibly can, that I think, you know, we'll return to that. I think, you know, as Mary Quinn pointed out, there's so much innovation going on in all of our industries between, you know, contactless interaction when you travel, you know, heightened cleaning technologies that we're even trialing here, talking about, you know, innovations in the health space that can be activated at the airport in terms of, you know, if you have to do temperature screening or other sort of safety assessments that I think we're going to be all very cognizant, and there'll be some really good innovations coming out of this calamity that I think will help the entire nation be safer and more mindful. And hopefully, I think even folks are looking at even different things that how you can build into building materials to make them sort of disease resistant, right? So we can try to safeguard against something like this happening in the future. So all lessons to be learned. I think folks are kind of double down on what those lessons are, so that we can try to resume some sense of normalcy.
Okay. Candace, that was a good lead in to kind of where I want to take this, as far as perhaps keeping on the time of a final round robin wrap up question and looking, you know, to a brighter future than what we are currently experiencing. Former mayor of Chicago likes to say, never let a serious crisis go to waste. So you talked about innovation, but as we look forward, more forward, why don't each of you tell us what you see as that ray of sunshine, that hope, the positive that can come out of this as we move toward a recovery. And I've lost track of who should be going first. So Mary Quinn, you go first.
All right. Well, I am actually feeling really optimistic when I think about the future, and specifically optimistic about what that means for Kentucky. And I think even in this first phase of reopening, where we still have a little bit of trepidation, or maybe a lot of trepidation out there, I think Kentucky is really well situated. First of all, we've always been a beautiful state and have an abundance of natural beauty and natural resources that we can invite people to partake in. And I also think that we're situated such that we can attract people from nearby states without having to spend too much time traveling to get there. We've always been a good value, and I think that will remain the same. Of course, people are going to be looking at their disposable income very differently on the other side of this pandemic. And so Kentucky stands to gain from the fact that we are a great value. And so I think those three things work really nicely to help us in the early phases. I do think that from my perspective at Visit Lex, we're expecting the drive market to come back first. And I know our specific plans with respect to marketing will be very much twofold in saying, first of all, we've got wide open spaces, and we invite you to come join us and enjoy some of those. And also that we want to make you feel completely comfortable that we've taken all the necessary steps in ensuring your safety and your health and well-being while you're here. And so we'll start with the drive market. We'll probably look, a 3-hour to 4-hour radius to begin. And then I think we'll continue to push out from there. Like I said, I guess in sort of summary, I feel optimistic about it. I'm super eager to get started on it. And we're just trying to balance our enthusiasm and our eagerness to get started with, the safety precautions and guidelines that are out there to keep all of us safe. So,
thank you. Dave, let's go to you. Your ray of hope.
All right. Well, I appreciate it. I wasn't born in Kentucky, but I got here as soon as I could, and I couldn't be more proud to be in a state like this. And this is my ray of sunshine, right? I think people want to know that they can trust you, right? And with brands like Marriott, with brands that they can trust, and the work that everybody in this panel and everybody that the networks that we've talked about here today, I think we're building real trust, so that people feel comfortable with that. We need to be easy to do business with, and that also means our proximity, right? So people can drive in easily, from Nashville, from Chicago, from anywhere in the Midwest. And as our air flight in and out of Kentucky, we've got trusted carriers. So that trust and ease to do business with are strengths of ours. And then they want to have a value. And wow, what value we create when people may have been doing business or traveling to the Atlantas, the New Yorks, the Nashvilles, the Chicagos, the LAs, and they see what we have to offer here with real indigenous experiences, authenticity, ease to do business with, and confidence. That's my ray of hope here. I think we are setting in a position to really capitalize on the other side of this. And not being from here and working all over the country throughout my career and being here now, sometimes I think maybe I see it more than people have been here all their life. Wow, we've got a gem here, and we need to protect that, but we also need to let people know about it because it's pretty special. And I think those three things, trust, ease to do business, and presenting a value, that's my ray of sunshine, that we're going to come out of this, and we're going to come out of this in a position of strength.
Well said. Well said. Candace?
I'll tell you, I think Dave hit the nail on the head. I think those three things point to the overall ray of sunshine Commonwealth, which is collaboration. Like Dave, I'm not from here, and the people here in Northern Kentucky enveloped me quickly. And I think that is the experience we can offer going forward, that we will collaborate to move forward in a reasonable, rational way. We will be safe. We will be welcoming, all of those things that, like Mary Quinn said, we have to come out of this with a sense of optimism and a realistic optimism. But I think that spirit is alive and well, and it will bode well for us.
Eric, I know wherever there is bourbon, there is always a ray of sunshine, but apart from the product, talk to us.
Well, I think a couple of things. First of all, I'm confident because we have great leadership. We have great leadership in the tourism community. We have great leadership in our elected officials right now. We have great leadership. I've got to give a shout out, shameless plug. Happy birthday, Jessica Pendergrass, our chairwoman at KDA today. We have great leadership of the Commonwealth that are steering us in the right direction. And so that gives me a ray of sunshine that with our local elected officials, our tourism, all of our associations, again, the chamber, Hank, with the fantastic job you do at KTIA, I'm confident that we're going to get to the other side of this. And then secondly, born and raised Kentuckian, we always put our best foot forward, right? I think we'll have a great image coming out of this, and we're going to make a great first impression on people when they do come back, that yes, we have taken this seriously and we're doing the right things to make sure that people feel safe and feel welcome here, because, to steal upon one of our old marketing slogans. There's only one Kentucky, right? There's only one Kentucky Bourbon Trail. There's only one Keeneland, one Churchill Downs, one Mammoth Cave. You know, there are so many unique things about Kentucky that make people want to come here. We are different than any other state. And I think that is my ray of sunshine too, that there's so much to do here. People are going to want to come back and experience that. And yes, it's going to be slow at first. You're going to see that in every state. But I think, again, when we do a great job of reminding people what all Kentucky has to offer and what a unique, special place that this is, that they will come back, they will feel safe, and we'll rebound. We always have, we always will.
Excellent. I'm going to add mine to this very quickly as we're about to wind down. And I'll tell you, yesterday, we sent a letter to every member of the General Assembly. And we got their attention, I think, perhaps by saying that this letter is not asking for funding right now. It's not asking for policy changes right now. We're only asking for one thing right now, and that is that they remember, what it's like in this moment when tourism has gone away. Because then when we're back, hopefully we won't have to spend all the time that we've spent in the past trying to convince, and not just legislators, but policymakers generally, all the way to the general public, of how important this industry is to this state, economically, socially, and all the many other ways. And so that's my ray of hope, that in these worst of times, that we will come out of it with a memory for folks of how important this industry is to the Commonwealth, and the great work as represented by the people on this panel that goes into making those extraordinary contributions. So we ask that they remember, and that usher in a new era of awareness and appreciation, understanding of this industry. And so, Brother John Cox, with that, I'll turn it back over to you.
Well, thanks, Hank, and thanks everyone for taking the time this afternoon, especially our panelists for providing us with great perspective and insight. If you missed part of today's discussion, we have been recording this webinar and we'll be posting it on our website, kychamber.com. And our website provides a lot of valuable resources related to COVID-19 with our Restart Kentucky initiative. We've been working to provide a platform where Kentuckians can find out what businesses are hiring, find out how you can get your hands on some PPE, some personal protective equipment, and also where and how to get tested for the coronavirus. So be sure to check that out. And again, thanks so much to all our panelists and for those tuning in. I think it's been a great discussion, and best of luck moving forward. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time. Cheers.
Yeah, have a good afternoon,
Thank you.
everyone. Thanks.
Hey, all.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Cheers.